Sorry.
It's Robin Swann.
Right, okay, so it's Robin Swann. Go on,
No, not in HoC.
Okay. Order. I will call Robin Swann to move the motion, and I will then call the Minister to respond. There, of course, won't be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention for 30-minute debates. Order, Robin Swann, to move the motion.
Thank you. Chair, I beg to move that this House has considered the role of the Northern Ireland's Veterans Commissioner. Thank you, Mr Dowd, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship in this Westminster Hall debate, my first one as sponsor. I want to take this time to cover a number of points. The first being how the position actually came about and its need. The second being the current situation and why, indeed, I've brought this debate. And the third, the opportunity to provide recommendations to the Minister as to how the office could be and should be delivered to benefit our veteran community in Northern Ireland. Chair, the New Decade New Approach document, which was co-authored by the British and Irish governments in January 2020, which saw the restoration of the Northern Ireland Assembly following what was after a 3-year period where it had failed to meet or an executive to be established. Under Annex A of that document, which covered the UK Government's commitments to Northern Ireland, there was a section actually entitled Our Commitments to Veterans. It contained 4 points. The first was to introduce UK-wide legislation to further incorporate the Armed Forces Covenant into law and support full implementation of the Armed Forces Covenant. The second was to appoint a Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner to act as an independent point.
On that point?
I'll take that point.
Mr Chairman, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for South Antrim for this and commend him for his first Westminster debate? It's very clear that we have much to be thankful to Danny Kinahan as a man of integrity and a veteran himself, and his footsteps will be difficult to step into. One of the overarching themes from discussions with veterans as individuals and a number of groups has been to highlight firstly the vital need for a replacement, and secondly that a replacement is themselves a victim. We do not desire a civil servant with experience holding a pen, when only those who experience holding a weapon, wearing a uniform, can know how we feel and what we need. Does the Honourable Member not agree that this has to be and must be the case?
And I thank the member for Strangford for his intervention. And to clarify, he means a veteran, because I think that's the point that is very, very vocal coming forward from the veterans community themselves. But it was to go back to that point under that agreement that the Veterans Commissioner was to work as an independent point of contact to support and enhance outcomes for veterans in Northern Ireland. The third point was to initiate a review of the aftercare service in Northern Ireland, which will consider whether the remit of ACS should be widened to cover all His Majesty's Forces veterans who live in Northern Ireland with service-related injuries and conditions. And the fourth was to ensure that the work of the War Memorials Trust, who protect and conserve our war memorials across the UK, is better promoted and understood in Northern Ireland. So in August 2020, the then Secretary of State Brandon Lewis announced that the former Ulster Unionist MP Danny Kinahan had been appointed as Northern Ireland's first Veterans Commissioner. And at this point, Mr Dowd, in a spirit of transparency, I would have it noted that Minister Kinahan was my party's previous MP in the seat that I now represent in South Antrim. His appointment at that time was welcomed across the board. The then leader of the DUP, now Baroness Foster, said his appointment was a positive and long overdue step toward ensuring the needs of Northern Ireland's large and vibrant demography of armed forces veterans are particularly understood and addressed, and that he brings a wealth of experience to the role, and I know he will be keen to embrace the huge entry that awaits. I will.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way and congratulate him on securing the debate. Would he agree with me that the pressing need to have a Commissioner has been exemplified even this weekend just past in the national press, where the issue of the late Captain Robert Nairac was highlighted, and the ongoing problems that many veterans face, having witnessed horrific and terrible incidents in the past, and many of them still live with those thoughts?
And I think that's the valid point that the member makes, or the Honourable Member makes. Because in a question where I actually asked the Northern Ireland office in regards to the reappointment or the recruitment. I was told, actually, in a question asked on the 12th of September, the answer I got then was we will set out steps for the appointment of a new Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner in due course. We're now almost a month on. And,
would the member go away? Surely the greatest deficiency is the fact that there is no statutory basis for the Veterinary Commissioner. And if we're going to secure the long-term future of the provision, the essential provision that a Veterinary Commissioner can bring, surely we need, as elsewhere in the United Kingdom, to have it on a statutory basis. And isn't that the most important step that this government could take in terms of moving this matter forward?
And again, I thank the member for North Antrim for his point, and I'll come on to that because I do quote him later on in regards to the concerns that were raised when Mr Kinnock actually resigned. On the appointment at that stage of Mr Kinnock, the leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Dr Steve Egan, said that will be warmly welcomed by all veterans and the wider armed forces community across all of Northern Ireland, and how he would be a first-rate advocate for the many thousands here who had served. And by his appointment, we have at long last joined the rest of the United Kingdom in providing that very necessary representation.
Very grateful, Mr Dowd, and do congratulate the honourable member for securing this important debate. And I think it's just important at this stage in the contribution this morning, having heard the comments of the former leader of the DUP and former leader of the Ulster Unionist, for me to place on record our appreciation for the work that Danny engaged in, that he didn't do it in a party political way, but he rose to the occasion to be a Veterans First Commissioner and champions, and having recognised and worked with him throughout his time in that role, I think he is going to come on to some important deficits and deficiencies in not only how the role was hampered and constrained by Northern Ireland Office and the appointing department, but also lacked the resource that would have allowed the Commissioner to engage with anything more than around a tenth of veterans in Northern Ireland that he had the opportunity to engage with properly.
And again, I thank the honourable member for East Belfast for his intervention, and believe it or not, I was actually going to quote him later in my contribution as well, but he has preempted it, so trust me, this is a cross-community representation that we're making here today to the Minister and the Northern Ireland Office. So, Chair, moving on from those warm words of congratulations on Mr Kinnock's appointment, it comes why we're actually here today, because unfortunately on the 5th of September this year, 4 years after the role had been created, and actually following having been reappointed to a second term, Mr Kinnock issued a statement announcing his resignation, which came as a surprise to some. His statement said, "I can confirm that I have today resigned from my position as Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner, and following an open and frank conversation with the Secretary of State, I have sadly concluded that I cannot provide the independent voice that veterans require. There's a feeling among some veterans in Northern Ireland that they have been forgotten and that they do enjoy the same protections as their counterparts in Great Britain. Veterans in Northern Ireland have particular needs and concerns which need to be addressed by the UK Government, which I have made very clear in our discussions." And in closing, what Danny said was, "Finally, I would like to place on record my gratitude to all those who have placed their trust in me and assisted me with my work over the last 4 years, and I will continue to work in the interests where I can." I'll give way to the member.
Thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate him on this debate today. Would the member agree with me that it is essential to strengthen and empower the authority of the Veterans Commissioner, that any enhancement is crucial to effectively protect and promote the interests of our veterans?
And I do agree with the member in North Down, and I'll expand on that in my later comments. On Mr Kinnock's resignation, and referring to it actually in the Northern Ireland Assembly, Lord Elliott, or an Ulster Unionist member for Fermanagh South Tyrone, said that his resignation impacted directly on the veterans community and the available support to veterans in Northern Ireland, because he had cited an inability to provide the independent voice that veterans require. Lord Elliott went on to say that it underscored a critical development in how veterans' affairs are managed in Northern Ireland, and that recent events have sparked widespread concern across the veterans community and beyond, making it a matter of immediate relevance. The recent loss of the Northern Ireland's Veterans Support Office underscores an alarming development that could lead to a gap in support. Given the sacrifices made by veterans, any perceived failure in providing adequate support is of exceptional public interest and requires immediate attention by the Assembly and the Northern Ireland Office. The Honourable Member for North Antrim and the leader of the Traditional Unionist Voice said that Danny Kinnock performed the role in very challenging circumstances, and now is an opportunity for the Government to address fundamental issues before appointing a successor. Again, as he said in his intervention, the role of Veterans Commissioner must be put into a statutory basis, and Government must provide proper resources and structures. He also pointed out, I think, something that was crucial, something not widely known, as the post of the Veterans Commissioner is currently only a part-time role with just 2 staff. By way of contrast, the Victims Commissioner role is full-time with a staff of 7. And many veterans' issues in Northern Ireland still need to be resolved, and the previous government had a draft bill to align the Veterans Commissioners across the UK and put the posts onto a statutory basis, something that the new Labour government needs to take forward. The Right Honourable Member for East Belfast and the leader of the DUP, in his contribution, said that veterans throughout Northern Ireland and our party's veterans champions and local council recognise the commitment that he had displayed. So why the debate today, Chair, and why did the Veterans Commissioner for Northern Ireland come to the decision that he did? In meeting Mr Kinnock and summing up some of his points was that the most significant issue facing the Veterans Commissioner is actually that lack of operational independence. The Commissioner is restricted to a part-time status, limiting the ability to fulfil the broad responsibilities of the role. The 2 staff members are assigned to the office by the Northern Ireland Office, selected without input from the Commissioner, and these staff members report directly to the NIO, not the Commissioner, thereby, he felt, undermining the Commissioner's authority to lead and manage the office. The Commissioner also faced considerable limitations in staffing decisions. Even, for example, office staff are empowered to propose bonus awards for themselves and not actually initiated by himself as the Commissioner. The Commissioner had requested a formal appraisal process to assess staff performance to address areas of improvement. That was not implemented, actually leaving the Commissioner powerless to manage the office effectively. And again, the structural limitations imposed have transformed the role, in his feeling, to the role whereas the Commissioner is now that of a figurehead. While the Commissioner is the public face of veteran advocacy in Northern Ireland, actually decision-making, he felt, was dominated by the Northern Ireland Office, rendering the Commissioner's role largely symbolic. The Commissioners, and Danny had said he had also struggled to ensure that the Secretary of State received full, unedited reports, which he felt undermined the Commissioner's ability to influence policy effectively. So how do those concerns actually impact on the role of the Commissioner? So the inadequate identification of support for veterans. One of the Commissioner's primary responsibilities is to identify veterans and to ensure that they receive appropriate public services. Northern Ireland does not have a comprehensive database of veterans, and no questions were included in the recent consensus to identify our veterans. So the Commissioner had repeatedly raised the need for a door-to-door leafleting to inform veterans of available support. So as a result, the Commissioner himself estimated that only between 5,000 and 10,000 of the 120,000 veterans in Northern Ireland are in contact with support services. And this failure to engage veterans is a direct consequence of involvement in office operations and a refusal to allocate resources to key initiatives. Chair, it should also be acknowledged those 40,000 veterans who have served in the Ulster Defence Regiment under constant threat, which continued after their service ended. Different challenges, and now mostly at an age where a local focus is required. In regards to the health service for veterans, the Commissioner has also identified significant challenges in accessing healthcare for veterans, particularly those in long-term awaiting surgery. He had put forward a proposal where there could be partnership with NHS England and King Edward VII Military Hospital, actually to provide veterans with a faster access to surgery to achieve Covenant and government commitments. But he felt again that that initiative was hampered maybe by the over-application of Section 75. The third one where he raised the concern was actually the closure of our Veteran Support Office, because the closure of the VSO is a stark example of how veteran support in Northern Ireland has been undermined. The VSO was a trusted, again independent organisation which provided centralised support for veterans and its closure has left a significant gap in services. The Commissioner's views were neither considered nor consulted in the making of the decision, which seems to be driven by the NIO and the OVA. So, Chair, the concerns that have been raised have also been brought forward in the independent review of the UK Government Welfare Services for Veterans that was published in July 23. There were 3 key Northern Ireland recommendations. Recommendation 8 was a formal welfare service board should be created, which should include MOD officials and the Veterans Commissioners for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Recommendation 27, consideration in retaining the NIVSO brand alongside the OVA should be considered. So, Chair, in concluding, I will move to the recommendations for the future, and there are 4, and that's to restore the effectiveness of the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner and to ensure the office can fulfil its intended role. Those following changes are essential. The first is to establish the full independence of the office. Commissioners' offices must be fully independent from the NIO with direct control over staffing, budgeting and decision making. The second was to increase the time allocation from the Commissioner, increasing it from a part-time role to be expanded to a full-time role or at least a more significant time allocation. The third was to reinstate the Veterans Support Office. The VSO must be reinstated as an independent and trusted body, with the Commissioner playing a key role in shaping its service. And the fourth and final was to improve reporting and communication. And Commissioners should have the authority to submit reports directly to the Secretary of State and have the ability to engage directly with the very relevant Minister and Department. Chair, in regards to that, that is why I've brought this debate and made these recommendations.
The question is that this House has considered the role of the Northern Ireland Veterans Minister. The Minister to respond to the debate, please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Mr Dowd. This is my first Westminster Hall debate responding from the government, and I'm very delighted that it's on this issue. My grandfather was from Northern Ireland and served in the British Army, so this issue is very close to my heart, and I am so grateful for his service and the service of all veterans. And I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for South Antrim, on securing this important debate, his first Westminster Hall debate as well, and on his work to prove support for veterans in Northern Ireland for many, many years, including reconvening the Armed Forces Liaison Forum when he was Health Minister for Northern Ireland. I know my honourable friend is deeply committed to ensuring that veterans in his constituency, and indeed right across the UK, receive all the recognition they deserve and the support which they are entitled to, a commitment shared by this government and I'm sure by all in this hall today. Yes.
Very grateful to the Minister, Mr Dowd, and I appreciate that she is here today and speaks with a personal connection to this story as well. She will know that the commitments in NDNA were important and represented work that had been going on here in the Defence Select Committee and through private members' bills to make sure veterans in Northern Ireland had a strong voice like their counterparts across the United Kingdom. And she should also know that the last number of years have proven very difficult for veterans, with the closure of the Veterans Support Office and with the feeling that they are not treated just the same as their counterparts across the UK. Does she understand that today the most important initial step she could take would be to confirm that the NIO will advertise the position of Veterans Commissioner, do that now, and indicate that the commitment to their support is there?
I've accepted that people are intervening on a very important matter, but I'd ask members to be careful about and considerate in relation to their interventions in such debates. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Right Honourable Member for his intervention. In fact, my next sentence was going to be one that will please him greatly, I think. I was about to say, which is why we have moved very quickly to advertise the position of the Northern Ireland Veteran Commissioner. In fact, it will be advertised this week. All the details will be available, and so this debate is extremely timely and can serve as a very long job advertisement for this positioner as well. And I hope to many people who will be listening or reading this debate in Hansard that they will consider applying for this position. It's such an important position, and we have moved extremely quickly as a government, which demonstrates our commitment to veterans' support. If I keep giving way, I won't have any time to speak. I think I will continue. Mr Kinahan, was appointed by the previous government and who established the role of the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner, and I would join the Secretary of State in expressing my gratitude for Mr Kinnan's dedicated work over the last 4 years on behalf of veterans and their families living in Northern Ireland. As has been said, this was one of the commitments made as part of the New Decade New Approach political agreement in January 2020, which helped to restore devolved government in Northern Ireland. As set out in New Decade New Approach, the Commissioner's role was to act as an independent point of contact to support and enhance outcomes for veterans in Northern Ireland. Danny Kinahan, himself a veteran and subsequently Northern Ireland elected representative, as has been mentioned, took up the role on the 1st of September 2020. Over the last 4 years, the Commissioner and his team have worked to deliver that important support for veterans in Northern Ireland. Their work conducting direct veteran engagements and veteran information roadshows across Northern Ireland has been particularly valuable, as has their establishment of a Veterans Mental Health Committee, involving a number of key mental health service providers for veterans. I know the Commissioner was also involved in encouraging collaborative working with the veterans sector, working closely with the Veterans Commissioners in Scotland and Wales, with regimental associations and with the voluntary sector. He also sought to ensure that Northern Ireland veterans' views were heard in my department and across Whitehall with regard to the Legacy Act and the development of the Independent Commission on the Information Recovery and Reconciliation. In delivering their role, the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner's Office works closely with a range of local, statutory and non-statutory stakeholders. Previously, this included the Veterans Support Office, which was formed in 2018 to develop capacity to deliver the Armed Forces Covenant in Northern Ireland and played a role in coordinating and signposting to charity provision. It closed in June this year as the way support for veterans is provided in Northern Ireland continues to evolve. Many of the Veterans Support Office functions had over time been replicated by other organisations or superseded by other initiatives. This includes the establishment of the Veterans Commissioner's Office, which now plays a leading role in communicating with and championing the needs of veterans resident in Northern Ireland, as well as building connections with partners delivering support to veterans across Northern Ireland. The Office of Veterans Affairs has additionally created a new role based in Belfast to provide dedicated strategic coordination of organisations, programmes and initiatives that support veterans' wellbeing in Northern Ireland. And that post will also be operational imminently. It's a post that rightly is evolving to continue to support veterans. This is a government of service that will always stand up for those who have served our country. My honourable friend and colleague, the Minister for Veterans and People, is leading work across government and with civil society to ensure that our veterans and their families get access to the health, housing, employment and other support that they need, wherever they reside in the United Kingdom. And in Northern Ireland specifically, the specialist statutory welfare body for veterans, the Veterans Welfare Service, provides information and practical support to veterans and their families, including timely physiotherapy and psychological therapies to enable eligible veterans. And there is the £500,000 Defence Medical Welfare Service pilot that additionally supports veterans' health and well-being in Northern Ireland and provides insight that will improve our understanding of veterans' health needs. Veterans in need of housing advice, meanwhile, can contact the government's single housing support pathway, Operation Fortitude, where a dedicated team of advisors work to assist veterans across the UK. The Armed Forces Covenant, in addition, continues to be a key government priority, with a commitment to fully implement the Covenant in law. The Armed Forces Covenant ensures that the Armed Forces community is treated fairly across the UK, including in Northern Ireland, although its delivery is approached differently there due to Northern Ireland's unique historical and political circumstances. As has been mentioned by the member for South Antrim, at the beginning of September, the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner met the Secretary of State, who accepted his resignation. Mr Kinahan explained his reasoning, and that has been reiterated publicly. And again, I join the Secretary of State in expressing my gratitude for Mr Kinahan's dedicated work, and I am delighted that we worked immediately to continue with the reappointment of the Veterans Commissioner, and that will be happening, I hope, tomorrow, but maybe later, just this very week. The appointment of the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner will be made on merit by the Secretary of State following an open and transparent process, and that includes public advertising and independent assessment. And again, I would encourage all suitably experienced people to apply for this important role. In the meantime, the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner's Office has and will continue to engage with veterans, signposting them to support, including while the Veterans Commissioner is appointed. Indeed, I believe the Office was involved in a very successful event last month at Parliament Buildings in Belfast, which recognised and celebrated Northern Ireland Veteran Service in Iraq and Afghanistan, and which was sponsored by my honourable friend's party colleague, Lord Elliott. In addition, the Government is committed to continuing to support veterans in Northern Ireland through the Veterans Welfare Service, which has field teams across Northern Ireland that are linked in with various partner organisations and statutory bodies, and with the different initiatives funded via the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust. This includes the Veterans Places, Pathways and People programme, known as the Veterans Pathway in Northern Ireland, which is led by the charity Brook House and does excellent work in improving the coordination of mental health support to veterans among partner organisations locally. Beyond the battlefield, we're also awarded £100,000 in March 2024 to provide wraparound services for veterans in Northern Ireland who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. I've listened carefully to the points made by the member for South Antrim about the basis for the role, communicating with veterans and the ability to be able to communicate with veterans, and health support, and the other issues which I'm very pleased that he has raised. I'm sure will be read by any applicants for the role and by the future Veterans Commissioner themselves. In conclusion, I once again thank my honourable friend for tabling this important debate. The role of the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner is an important element of support provided to veterans across a wide range of areas, which I've already detailed, in recognition of their service to our country. Let me once again encourage everyone to apply for the post if you are suitably experienced, and reiterate that this government recognises the dedicated service of all our veterans and is committed to supporting the veteran community across the whole of the United Kingdom. This is a government of service that will always stand up for those who've served our country, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered the role of the Northern Ireland Veterans Commissioner. As many as of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. Sitting is suspended until 2:30 p.m.